You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. During the mid-20th century, a monumental movement known as the Second Great Migration saw over 5 million African Americans leave the South for new horizons in the Northeast, Midwest, and, for the first time, the West. This mass movement kicked off in 1940, amid World War II, and continued until 1970. It was a significant chapter in U.S. history, differing from the earlier Great Migration, 1916 to 1940, which saw mainly rural farmers moving only to the Northeast and Midwest. In this second wave, cities like Los Angeles, Oakland, Phoenix, Portland, and Seattle became new homes for a large number of African Americans. These cities weren't just chosen at random. They were booming with skilled job opportunities, especially in the defense industry. Interestingly, most of these migrants were not newcomers to city life, but were urban workers relocating from the cities of the South. Despite this massive relocation, it's crucial to remember that African Americans continued to face discrimination in various parts of the country. For many, the move was not just in search of better job prospects, but also a quest for a life away from the racial prejudices they faced in the South. Before moving, many African Americans in the South already resided in cities and had occupations that were well suited to urban life. They journeyed north and west to cities that were booming with industrial opportunities, including jobs in the defense industry during the Second World War. While some cities offered them only low-skilled, segregated work, places like California, Oregon, and Washington provided well-paying, skilled jobs in shipyards. By the time the second major wave of migration concluded, African Americans had predominantly become city residents. Over 80% lived in urban areas, which was a higher percentage than that of the rest of the population in the United States. Even though 53% remained in the South, about 40% moved to the Northeast and the North Central states, with 7% heading to the West. During the Second World War, many African Americans found themselves in support roles, some of which were incredibly dangerous. A tragic example was the accidental explosion in Port Chicago, California, in 1944, which killed more than 200 African American sailors. Following the tragedy, some sailors demanded safer working conditions and were imprisoned for mutiny when they refused to work under the same dangerous conditions. The promise of high-paying jobs in shipbuilding during the war led many African Americans to move to the West Coast. This significantly increased the African American populations in cities like Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. These new residents stayed, becoming a permanent part of the community. They enhanced the political influence of African Americans, strengthened civil rights groups like the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and pushed for laws against discrimination. However, this growth was not without its challenges. It led to increased racial tensions, overcrowded living conditions in both black and white neighborhoods, and conflicts within the African American community over leadership roles. Just like the people who were part of the Great Migration, those involved in the Second Great Migration moved because they were looking for better job opportunities. Before these migrations, African Americans in the South were stuck in tough situations. They were mostly working in agriculture, like sharecropping, which didn't allow them much room to move up and improve their lives. In this system, it didn't matter how skilled or hard-working someone was. Their position was fixed due to segregation, with men working in the fields and women in domestic roles. Since these conditions barely changed from the early 20th century, it's no surprise that many African Americans decided to pack up and search for better prospects elsewhere. The Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933, a key part of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, was set up to help American farmers during the Great Depression by trying to boost agricultural prices. However, the plan had unintended consequences. It meant reducing crop production, which led to farms getting bigger and more mechanized, leaving a lot of rural workers without jobs. This, along with the ongoing issues of segregation and discrimination, pushed African Americans to look for work in the cities of the North. During the 1930s and 1940s, new farming technologies like the mechanical cotton picker made a lot of farm labor redundant. This technological shift, coupled with the labor shortages brought on by World War II, when millions were drafted or enlisted in the military, opened up opportunities in the North and West. To keep up with wartime production, employers in these regions started hiring both Southern blacks and whites. Besides looking for jobs, African Americans were also motivated by the chance for a better education, the desire to escape racial violence, and the hope for political rights, all of which fueled their migration northward and westward. During World War II, a significant number of African Americans moved to northern and western cities, hoping to find work in the booming munitions industry. This migration added to the established black communities in places like Chicago and New York City, but also introduced many to western cities such as the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles, Portland, Phoenix, and the Puget Sound region in Washington. Upon arrival, migrants faced a stark separation from white communities, leading to the formation of racially homogeneous neighborhoods. For instance, in 1960, almost all of Los Angeles's 461,000 black residents lived in communities with a black majority, showcasing the reality of de facto segregation. In cities, planners and developers directed African Americans to specific low-income housing areas, like Chicago's South Side and South Central Los Angeles, creating concentrated minority communities. These areas were made appealing through low housing costs, strategically encouraging the separation from white neighborhoods. Freeways and fear of racial violence played roles in further segregating communities, leading to overcrowding and a drop in property values in these segregated areas. This drop in property values led to white flight, where white residents left for the suburbs, leaving behind a racially diverse inner city contrasted with predominantly white suburbs. Over 70% of blacks in metropolitan areas lived in city centers, compared to just 30% of whites. Real estate practices like blockbusting exacerbated this trend, as black families moving into previously white neighborhoods prompted white homeowners to sell their properties at low prices, which were then sold at higher prices to more black families. Discriminatory housing laws also posed challenges. The 1963 Rumford Fair Housing Act, which aimed to eliminate housing discrimination, was undercut by California Proposition 14 in 1964, effectively allowing property owners to discriminate based on race. This law was eventually deemed unconstitutional and repealed in 1974, but not before contributing to segregation and sparking the Watts riots in 1965. Despite these obstacles, the African American communities that formed brought with them a rich cultural heritage from the South, influencing the cities they moved to with their food, music, and experiences, including encounters with discrimination. Contrary to some narratives, census data from 1940 through 1990 indicates that these migrant families often maintained more traditional family structures than was commonly believed, including higher instances of two-parent households and fewer never-married mothers. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.